couple of weeks ago, two teenage boys on TikTok made a video about how Booktok had been taken over by older women who just make videos talking about their smutty romances. And they had a problem with the fact that why is it that every time you go on the Booktok um, TikTok page or the tags, all you get are women who are reading all these spicy novels. They talked about how, that is very unfair, especially to teenagers who are trying to find great book recommendations, and all they are getting are all these X-rated 18 plus smut romances, which is not what it is that they wanted to get on BookTok. And, as expected, there were a lot of responses. You had quite a lot of women and femmes on the platform making videos about how they consider it a very misogynistic statement to be all women on BookTok are talking about is romance and smart, etc., etc. And basically drill down to, hey, it's misogyny, don't be saying things like this. That's like, you have no right to police what it is that majority of women are reading on this platform. And then I saw a black TikToker make a response to that, talking about how, white women are, white women, please do not use misogyny as your go-to response to this conversation response video. And I felt like that was a flawed thinking and response. And so I decided I was going to make this sit down video and let's have this conversation, because I find it very interesting that in fandom, especially when we're talking about romances and smutty romances, these conversations keep coming up. And yes, I've spent way too much time in fandom, and so I've seen this conversation come up, especially with regards smutty romance novels. This is not the first time this conversation is arising, which is why the immediate response of a lot of the women and femmes who saw that video was, this is misogynistic. This is a misogynistic take. And so I do think that when it is that you're thinking about a response, when it is that you're thinking about this outcry, immediately having a knee-jerk reaction being like, white women do not talk about misogyny challenge, in itself, it's a statement that does not consider the history and the origins of smutty romances, and why it is that a large proportion of the readers of these smutty romances are women and femmes. And what does that say about society, and why is it misogynistic for somebody to be like, why are you all not talking about more serious books? Or better yet, because I think it's partly misogyny that led to that statement. A large part of it is misogyny, but also ageism. And I think that these two conversations, unfortunately, always arise when it comes to women and their love for smutty romances, especially because a lot of the time it's fairly older women. Now, a lot of the times when these conversations arise with regards the people who consume a large number of smut and why it's mostly women, I think those conversations never really explore not like they never really explore it, because this is something that has been mentioned over and over and over again, and I think it bears repeating. A lot of the people that consume smutty romances are women and femmes. And why? It has always been a case of reading as a medium, especially when you're talking reading romances and reading smutty romances to be precise, has always been a means and a way for women and femmes to explore their sexuality within a society that is so deeply patriarchal, so deeply heteropatriarchal, right? That the expectation is that women's desires, the things that delight them, the things that turn them on, are not necessarily ever really considered in a patriarchal society. Our pleasures do not exist for us. Our pleasures exist for the patriarchy, for the men, right? And the pleasures is usually it's always considered in with regards to this pleasure that you get is a man getting several folds that pleasure as well, right? If that is not the case, then, you know, society is always like, she's a whore, right? why exactly do you consider, like, I think you should, a lot of the times we should explore or consider why is it that the easy response for a woman who is not controlled, a woman who takes her sexuality in hand, is always she's a whore, right? Because there's this inherent belief that being a whore is being all about your own selfish desires. You do not factor a man and what he wants and needs in those conversations, right? And by men, I'm speaking mostly with regards to cis straight men. So when these conversations arise, when, once again they bring up the old women are only reading smart, blah blah blah, because trust me, um I think I've said it like over here on this channel, that I'm not really a big fan of 50 Shades of Grey. When I was much younger, I like to call it 50 Shades of Bullshit. But I would defend to the very last person standing anybody's right to enjoy those romances. Do I think that they are the best representation of a BDSM relationship? Of course not. Like, nah, of course not. But it's a starting point. It's a way to get a lot of people to figure out that, oh, they might actually be into more kinky play. And for there, hopefully, they recognize that there's a better, right? There are better doms out there than Christian fucking Grey, and they can find that, right? So books have always been a gateway, right? A way for a lot of women and femmes to explore their sexuality. Do they like being touched this way? Does this turn them on? Does reading this description make their toes curl? And of course, there's the added conversation about, oh my God, a lot of people read dark romances, and oh, whoop-de-doo, you're reading dark romance. You're going to fall in love with somebody who's going to abuse you and is going to be a narcissistic piece of shit. Which I consider very insulting, because that's also assuming that as a woman, right, and as either as a woman, as a femme, or somebody who just likes to read dark smutty romances, I do not have the wherewithal, I do not have the intelligence, I do not have the logical skills to actually figure out that this is great on paper in a romance novel because it's just fulfilling a fantasy. In real life, this person is toxic as shit. The fact that you do not think that a lot of people can differentiate that in itself is very worrying, but that is not the conversation to be had today. The conversation is about how, for the longest time, romance novels, especially smutty romances, have always been a way for people to explore the things that they enjoy and they desire. And when you consider the fact that a large number of romance novels are read by women and femmes, then you can understand why the argument is that this is misogynistic. Because when it is that you as a man, and I know they are teenagers, but they are still men in a patriarchal society that believes that their needs and their wants should supersede what it is that others desire. And before you come on and be like, oh my God, but there are teenage girls that have said this, yes. Have you seen their videos? Do you not consider it still patriarchal that even though you have young teenage girls who might have been like, oh, Booktok is being taken over by these older women that are just talking about smut? Once again, we will get to the ageism part of this conversation. But when you consider, and the ageism part of the conversation is very tied to the purity culture part of this conversation as well. But when you consider that, sure, there might be the occasional woman or young girl that might have raised the concerns, why is it that their videos do not get this boost? Why is it that these two teenage boys whose voice are the loudest? Because a patriarchal society exists to promote the needs and wants and desires of men, whether it is that the men are in their 50s or they're in their fucking late teens. Either way, it is what they desire. Right? And it is that sense of entitlement of going through the world to believe that the world should cater itself to you that is inherent in a society that praises and tries to conform itself to the every need and desires of the men of the men in said society, that would give you the balls, the fucking cojones, the effrontery, the unmitigated gall to think that you can make such demands. It makes no sense. And yes, before we all go into the fact that but they are teenagers, they have the right to ask for that. Yes, But the reason why I've also stated that I've spent quite a time in fandom is because what happened to the fandom etiquette? What happened to the fandom belief that read what it is that you are interested in and just move away and walk away from the things that you don't want? Right? I grew up at a time when fandom was not catering itself to what everybody wanted. It was more of a case of explore fandom safe spaces. What we were pushing for is explore fandom spaces safely. But you should also be aware that when it is that something is clearly not for you, rather than you expect that every other person is going to bow down and fit themselves to what it is that you want and what you desire, you just keep it moving. That has always been fandom for me. That has always been what fandom has stood for to me. So these expectations that things should be changed to suit certain demographic, it's very interesting and very entitled, right? And you know, I personally think, and once again, these are just my thoughts and opinions. I would love to hear what your thoughts are in the comments, right? But once again, I have been reading romances since I was like a pre-teenager. I've been reading smut since I was like 13. A lot of people my age, older, started reading smut very early. Um, would I advise it now to a child of 15 to read some of the things I read at that age? I am not going to presume to enforce my desires on them, but I would rather say I would like them to have that choice. To be like, okay, I am comfortable reading this, or I'm not comfortable reading this, or I want to read both and figure things out. Because it's always about figuring things out, especially when you're a teenager and when you're that age, right? So I'm not saying that, teenagers on TikTok do not have the right to curate what it is that they want to read. I am saying that you should be aware that the internet does not just exist for them, that all these spaces are interconnected, and that you would have old ass people and younger people in there as well. Because TikTok is a very intuitive platform. The only reason why it's going to be showing you a lot of smutty recommendation is because you've not realized that the internet has always been driven by uh you tailor your internet experience to what it is that you want. Right? It's the reason why Archive of Our Own has survived so well as a great database for fan fiction, because of the fact that you can be very, very particular about what it is that you want to read and what it is that you do not want to read, and you can filter things out. And TikTok is one of the most intuitive platforms out there, in the sense that it can sense what it is that you want. If TikTok keeps giving you recommendations or keeps bringing videos on your FYP that are focused on just smutty romances, it's either because you have been searching for smutty romances, or you have been interacting with videos that contain smutty romances, which the number one rule of internet etiquette is, you're not interested, do not interact. It's like the number one rule. Not interested, keep it moving, walk it off, ignore it. It is not for you. And that is fine, because there are things that are for you. If it is that what you want are book recommendations that are centered around like thrillers, put that in your fucking search engines. Thriller book recommendations. If every time you open TikTok, that is what you search for, the algorithm would figure that, oh, this person likes thriller books, let me start pushing that. That is all you're gonna see. But the reason why it seems like there's so many smutty recommendations of Booktok is because a large percentage of people on Booktok are recommending smutty books. You don't like smutty books, search for something else. It is there. The internet is wide and vast and beautiful and filled with different people, all willing to talk about different things. I am 100% sure you will get the recommendations that you want. Like, that is what I was thinking when I was seeing the video of these boys. Because I'm just like, the fact that rather than curate the internet experience to be what they want, they instead decided to film a video attacking a whole other group of people, right? Who are fucking, a lot of them are adults. A lot of them are women and femme in their like late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, 40s. Of course, they are going to be reading smutty books. I repeat, I've been reading smutty books since my teenage years. Um, and it's not like I did not have friends who were not interested in smut, but how is it that at that age, my friends and I knew to be like, do you like this? No. Okay, then I'm not going to talk about it with you. And do you like this? No. Then, okay, when you're talking about it to somebody else who likes this particular book, I would walk away because I am not interested. What happens to walking away? What happens to blocking? What happens to scrolling away? Like, what happened to that? Because the way I see it as boys who wanted to get the clicks, which is also the reason why I'm not even dropping this video on TikTok. One, because I know that a lot of you that will be watching this are probably not on TikTok and so have no idea about the drama. And two, you're probably not even really interacting. But I was not about to give those teenage boys any sort of satisfaction by even interacting with their video, because the way I see it, they were rage for me. They were rage for me. You come to, because if you look at even part, you come to a platform, you come to a subsect of that platform, you know that a lot of people that are going to see this video are the women that you're challenging. You're basically implying that a lot of women's head is just filled with porn and smut, which is already very insulting and degrading. Although, yeah, to some people who consider it degrading, I'm like, my brain can be filled with smut and also astrophysics, but I'm not an astrophysicist. So my brain can be filled with smut and advertising and art and just the vagaries of life. I can have both because I am like, I contain multitudes, but also because I'm human, and that is just part of human experiences. But you go to they went to a subsect of TikTok where they knew that it was going to be mostly women who are reading this smart, and then they made this video. And then of course, when all the responses came in, they were all like, I don't know why all these women are losing their shit. Because of course, not only are you going to insult women's intelligence by implying that all they can read is smart, and of course they're not reading serious romances and serious books, not romances, but like they're not reading serious books, but you're also going to be all like, they're emotional, when it is that you purposefully created content to get an emotional response, also that you can have a gotcha thing. Like it just reeks. It's so many layers of misogyny. And my ass was just seeing this, and I was like, you know what? Fuck you. Fuck you. So, like I said, this video is mostly in response to the not in response, but just like a conversation, that a thought that I had when I saw that response about like, oh, white women like do not immediately fall to misogyny feedback. And I was like, yes, there are some times when it's not immediately misogyny, and oh my god, look at that, the sun loves me. Achilles. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Get up off the roof. Sorry. So, but look at that. I love it when it's just sunny. It's very hot. I don't know if you all can tell, but I'm sweaty because like there's no circulation. It's so fucking hot. But the sun just look at that. Okay, sorry, I get distracted. What was I about to say? Yeah. So like I get it that the whole point is meant to be comment, like the whole point of that video was just like, white women do not automatically assume that everything is misogyny just because you're trying to reach for something. Because in this case, they are not reaching. In this case, I personally think that it is misogyny and that there's layers to it. Because when you consider the content of that video and then the boys' response to the responses that they got, and now that in turn has also gained them followers. So they came into a subsect of Booktok that is mostly filled with older women who are talking about their smutty romances. They made a disparaging video. They got the feedback. They got like responses because they were rage farming. They got responses and then made other videos in response to those responses, and their numbers have been growing. If that is misogyny, I don't know what is. So I would like to ask, like, if you're watching this video right now, do you think it's misogyny? So this is that question is to everybody. That question is to everybody. But this next question is specifically to um black folks and other people of color. Do you think, right, that those responses were just white women trying to find a crutch, and we're like, misogyny is what we're going to do? I've already given my response that I don't think so. And I found it very interesting because, there are also black book talkers who read smutty romances. So what does that also say about them? What does that also say about them? And I'm like, I could get into the purity culture of things and why it is that purity culture is just yet another way for patriarchy to control women and femmes' bodies, right? And the things is that what we do with our bodies, what we experience with our bodies, is all about purity culture, right? Cover up. Why? I saw somebody make a tweet. I was like, you all should learn to cover up and not just talk about sex. Leave things to the imagination of the men that want you. And I'm like, who fucking wants the men? Who gives a fucking shit? We do not give half a non-existent nutsack to what it is that men want. You're just reading smutty romances because, like, it's so fucking fascinating and interesting and, a turn on. And who knows? I do know that, like, I think it was a smutty romance. I was like, oh, so that's what the clitoris is and that is what you're meant to feel. And okay, that is what I've been feeling. Not what you're meant to feel, what I've been feeling. I put a name to it and a word to it because I read it in a smutty book. Bite me. In a sexy way. But yes, those are my thoughts. I would love to get your responses and your feedback. If you like this video, please do not forget to subscribe to my channel if you're not yet subscribed. I make new bookish type content, book related content every Friday at 5 p.m. EST. So you get new videos from me 5 p.m. EST every Friday, book related content. So like I said, please subscribe if you're not yet subscribed. Consider liking this video. Drop your comments and your thoughts. Like, drop your thoughts in the comments because comments definitely help. Share this video with whoever you think that might be interested in it. I would really love to have this conversation on this platform. If you'd also consider supporting me on Patreon, like, no matter how small, it's much appreciated. The link to my Patreon is in the description bar. As well as, if you saw my previous video, which was a book haul, the first book I talked about, No One Dies Yet by Kobe Ben, which is fantastic, was edited by a dear friend. And she has a GoFundMe out that, she's facing homelessness. She needs to replace her glasses. They are literally falling apart. So no matter how small, if you would consider helping with like doing a donation or helping to spread the word about her GoFundMe, it would go a long, long way. A long, long way. A long, long way. What the fuck language? Like, Noria, my tongue is like all looped up. Because that is a very scary thing, right? Not having your glasses is a very scary thing. I say this as somebody who wears glasses. For the longest time, I kept telling people, I'm like, oh, I have invisible disabilities. That's what I've always said. Like, I have invisible disabilities. And then I had a friend once be like, you cannot see without your glasses. Like, if I reach for it now and break it, you're going to be stuck wherever you are. You won't be able to find your way home. You won't be able to reach out to anybody. You cannot fucking see. All you would see are blurry shapes with some color. That is a very visible disability. You need aids. You literally have aids on your eyes. Like, these are meant to help you see. So that was how I found out that, when you wear glasses, which a lot of people take for granted, yeah, you do have a disability, because once it's gone, you're fucked. So anything you can help with would definitely go a long way. But yes, until next time, like I've recently started to say, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.